Imagine for a second that you're wearing a pair of sunglasses, but these aren't ordinary glasses. They don't just dim the sun. They change the very color of the world around you. If the lenses are dark and cloudy, even the brightest summer day feels gloomy. If they're clear and polished, even a thunderstorm looks like a masterpiece of nature. That lens, that's your attitude. Most of us spend our lives trying to change the weather, trying to fix our jobs, our partners, or our bank accounts, thinking that's the key to happiness. But today, we're going to talk about a man who realized that if you just clean the lens, the weather starts to take care of itself. Welcome back, my dear actionable listeners. Today, we are diving deep into a modern classic of personal leadership, The Power of a Positive Attitude by Roger Fritz. Now, Roger Fritz wasn't just a motivational speaker who told people to think happy thoughts. He was a heavyweight in the world of business, a management consultant for giants like AT&T and IBM, a university president, and a man who wrote over 60 books on how to actually get things done. He didn't care about fluff. He cared about results. He wrote this book because he noticed something fascinating in his 40 years of consulting. Two people could have the exact same skills, the same education, and the same opportunities. Yet one would skyrocket to success while the other stayed stuck in the mud. The difference? It was never their talent. It was their positive attitude quotient. So now the question is, why are you listening to this right now? Because this book isn't just about feeling better. It's a practical manual for real life. By the time we finish this journey, you're going to understand how to rewire your internal dialogue so you stop being your own worst critic. You're going to learn how to deal with energy vampires, those people who try to sink your ship, and most importantly, you'll see how a shift in your perspective can literally change your physical health and your career trajectory. So let's just begin. Fritz starts with a hard truth. Attitude is a choice. We often think our attitude is a reaction to what happens to us. I'm in a bad mood because I got stuck in traffic. But Fritz flips the script. He argues that the traffic is neutral. It's just cars on a road. Your reaction is the only thing that is actually yours. He introduces us to the 90-10 rule. 10% of your life is made up of things you cannot control. The weather, the economy, a rude comment from a stranger. But the other 90%, that is entirely determined by how you respond to that 10%. Think about that. You are the CEO of your own mind. You might not be able to control the market, but you have 100% authority over the corporate culture inside your head. But here's the thing. Knowing you should have a positive attitude is easy. Actually doing it when life is hitting you hard, that's the challenge. So, how do we actually start rebuilding that internal culture? How do we take those dark, cloudy lenses and start polishing them until they're crystal clear? That brings us to the next part of our journey, the mechanics of the mind. We're going to look at the specific words you say to yourself every morning that are either building your ladder or digging your grave. Now that we've accepted that our attitude is a choice, we have to face a frustrating reality. Knowing it's a choice doesn't make the choice easy. If you've ever tried to just be positive during a crisis, you know it can feel like trying to put a Band-Aid on a broken leg. Roger Fritz understood this perfectly. He didn't believe in fake it till you make it. He believed in re-engineering. He argued that if you want a different output in your life, you have to change the internal programming that's running in the background while you sleep, eat, and work. Think of your mind like a high-performance computer. Most of us are running outdated, buggy software from 10 years ago. Software filled with, I can't, it's not fair, and I'm not lucky. Fritz's first mechanical fix? The self-talk audit. Fritz highlights a fascinating truth. Your brain is a loyal soldier. It doesn't question your commands. It simply executes them. If you tell yourself, I'm terrible with names. Your brain stops trying to remember them because you've given it an order to fail. He challenges us to look at our daily script. How many times a day do you use lockout words? Words like always, never, should, and must. Asterisk, I always mess up presentations. Asterisk, they never listen to my ideas. These aren't just descriptions of reality. They are commands. Fritz suggests a simple but profound shift. Replace I have to with I get to. Asterisk, I have to go to this meeting becomes I get to share my perspective in this meeting. Asterisk, I have to exercise becomes I get to move my body today. It sounds small, doesn't it? But over a week, a month, a year, that tiny shift in vocabulary changes the chemistry of your brain. It moves you from a victim mindset, where life is happening to you, to a creator mindset, where life is happening for you. But here is where Fritz separates himself from the dreamers. He argues that a positive attitude without a goal is like a ship with a powerful engine but no rudder. You'll have plenty of energy, but you'll just go in circles. In the book, Fritz explains that human beings are teleological. We are goal-seeking organisms. When we don't have a clear target, our minds naturally drift toward the negative. Why? Because the brain's default setting is survival mode, which means looking for problems and threats. To keep your attitude positive, you must give your brain a positive target. Fritz insists on writing down your goals, not just thinking about them. He calls these attitude anchors. When the storms of life hit, when you lose a client or have a family argument, your written goals act as an anchor that prevents your attitude from drifting out to sea. He teaches a simple 3-step process for every goal. 1. Define the why. If the reason isn't big enough, the attitude won't last. 2. Identify the obstacles. A positive person isn't blind. They see the walls, but they focus on a ladder. 3. The immediate action. Do one thing, no matter how small, within the next hour to prove to your brain that you are in control. The final mechanical piece Fritz discusses in this phase is what he calls the mental thermostat. Think about how a thermostat works. You set it to 72 degrees. If someone opens the door and a blast of cold air comes in, the thermostat doesn't just sit there and complain about the cold. It senses the drop, kicks the furnace on, and works until the room is back to 72. Fritz says we need to set our attitude thermostat every single morning. Before you check your emails, before you look at the news, you decide, today my temperature is solution-oriented that. When a blast of cold air hits, like a rude email or a flat tire, your internal furnace should kick in automatically. You don't ignore the problem. You simply refuse to let the room temperature of your mind drop. You stay at 72 degrees. This is the difference between reacting to life and responding to life. But let's be honest. It's one thing to manage your own thermostat when you're alone. It's another thing entirely when you walk into an office or a home where everyone else has their thermostat set to freezing. What do we do when our positive attitude is met with someone else's storm? How do we protect our new internal software from the viruses of negative people and unexpected failure? That is exactly where we're going next. We're moving from the me to the world as we look at the armor dealing with attitude anchors and the energy vampires of life. So, you started the work. You're auditing your self-talk. You're setting your attitude anchors. And you've set your internal thermostat to steady, productive warmth. You feel ready. But then, you walk out your front door. You encounter a co-worker who complains about everything from the coffee to the company's future. You deal with a client who is having a bad day and decides to make it your bad day. Or perhaps you face a sudden, unexpected setback, a project fails, or a plan falls through. Suddenly, that positive attitude feels fragile. Roger Fritz warns us that a positive attitude isn't a bubble that protects you from reality. It's a suit of armor that allows you to walk through the fire without getting burned. In this phase of the journey, we have to learn how to deal with what Fritz calls attitude anchors. An attitude anchor is anything or anyone that tries to sink your ship. We all know people who seem to have a problem for every solution. Fritz describes these as energy vampires. They don't just share their negativity. They feed on yours. Fritz gives us a radical strategy here: selective listening. He argues that while you must be polite, you are under no obligation to buy what they are selling. You can listen to a complaint without accepting it as your truth. He suggests a technique called the pivot. When someone dumps a pile of negativity on your desk, you acknowledge it briefly and then immediately pivot to a solution-oriented question. If they say, "This project is going to be a disaster," you respond with, "It sounds like you're worried about the timeline. What's one thing we could do today to get ahead of it?" You aren't being fake. You are simply refusing to let their anchor hook onto your ship. This brings us back to the most famous concept in Fritz's philosophy, the 90-10 rule. Fritz illustrates this with a classic real-world example. Imagine you're at breakfast. Your child accidentally spills a cup of coffee on your work shirt. You have no control over that. That is the 10%. But what happens next is the 90%. If you lose your temper, yell at your child, and blame your spouse, the stress levels in the house skyrocket. You go upstairs, change your shirt with shaking hands, and arrive at work late and frustrated. You've let that 10% event ruin 100% of your morning. But if you use your armor, you realize the coffee is already spilled. You calmly say, "It's okay, let's just clean it up." You change your shirt and you move on. The event was the same, but the result is entirely different. Fritz reminds us that he who loses his temper loses the argument. Your armor is your ability to pause between the event and the reaction. In that pause lies your freedom. But what about the big hits? The anchors that aren't just people, but actual failures? Fritz tells us that the most successful people he ever consulted for didn't have fewer failures than everyone else. They actually had more. The difference was how they labeled them. To a person with a negative attitude, failure is a verdict. I failed, therefore I am a failure. To a person with the armor of a positive attitude, failure is feedback. That method didn't work. Therefore I am now smarter than I was yesterday. He challenges us to look at every setback as a tuition payment in the school of life. You've paid the price in time and effort. So don't walk away without the lesson. When you shift from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to "What is this trying to teach me?" the anchor loses its weight. It stops being something that holds you back and starts being the very thing that helps you build muscle for the next level. Finally, Fritz discusses a mechanical trick to maintain your armor when you feel it cracking. Motion creates emotion. He suggests that when you feel your attitude slipping into a dark place, you should change your physical state. Stand up, walk faster, improve your posture. Smile, even if you don't feel like it yet. Fritz cites research showing that it is physiologically difficult to stay depressed or angry when your body is in an active, upright, and moving state. Your body can actually trick your brain into being positive until the feeling becomes real. Now, once you've learned to protect yourself from the world's negativity, something incredible happens. You stop being a victim of the room temperature, and you start becoming the person who sets it. You move from being the protected to being the leader, because a positive attitude isn't just a gift you give yourself. It's the most powerful tool you have for influencing, leading, and changing the people around you. Next, We're going to look at the influence, how to use your perspective to lead teams, build better relationships, and leave a lasting ripple effect in the lives of everyone you meet. Up until now, we've treated your attitude like a private garden, something you fence in, prune, and protect. But as you grow, that garden begins to release a fragrance that everyone around you notices. You move from self-management to influence. Roger Fritz spent decades in boardrooms with the world's top CEOs, and he noticed a recurring pattern. Leadership isn't about a title on a door. It's about emotional contagion. Emotions are caught more often than they are taught. If a leader enters a room leaking anxiety and frustration, the team will mirror that. But if a leader brings a grounded, solution-oriented, can-do spirit, the collective IQ of the room actually rises. Fritz introduces us to the mirror effect. He suggests that the way people treat us is often a direct reflection of the signal we are broadcasting. If you find that people are constantly defensive or difficult with you, Fritz asks a tough question. What is it about your approach that invites that response? A positive influencer doesn't wait for the other person to be nice first. They take the initiative. They use what Fritz calls positive expectancy. When you approach a difficult conversation expecting a win-win outcome, your body language, tone, and openness change. You give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. By treating people as if they are already the best version of themselves, you often navigate them toward actually becoming that version. But what about when things go wrong? How does a positive person handle discipline or mistakes in others? Fritz argues that a positive attitude doesn't mean being soft. In fact, it allows you to be much firmer because you aren't attacking the person. You are attacking the problem. He teaches the sandwich technique for feedback. 1. The bread. Start with sincere appreciation for what is working. 2. The meat. Address the specific behavior that needs a change, focusing on the future rather than dwelling on the past. 3. The bread. And with an expression of confidence in their ability to improve. By framing correction as a growth opportunity, you keep the other person's attitude thermostat from crashing into the red zone of defensiveness. You influence them to take ownership rather than making excuses. Then there is the E word, enthusiasm. Fritz dedicates a significant portion of his teaching to this, but he clears up a common myth. Enthusiasm isn't about being loud or bubbly. It comes from the Greek word entheos, meaning the God within. It is a deep, quiet, internal fire. Fritz calls enthusiasm the great multiplier. Talent plus enthusiasm is unbeatable. Skill plus enthusiasm creates mastery. He tells us that if we don't feel enthusiastic, we should act as if, not to be a fake, but because action precedes feeling. If you walk, talk, and act with purpose, your spirit eventually catches up. This acting as if isn't a lie. It's a rehearsal for the person you are becoming. When you start living this way, you realize that your attitude is the most contagious thing you carry. You start seeing shifts in your family, your office, and your community. But there's a final hurdle. How do we keep this fire burning a year from now? How do we ensure this isn't just a good week, but a good life? In our final section, we're going to look at the legacy. We'll discuss how to make these changes permanent, the long-term reward of a polished perspective, and how to leave a trail of light for others to follow. We've traveled a long way together. We've cleaned the lens of our perception, rebuilt our internal software, put on our armor against the world, and learned how to light a fire in others. But now, we have to ask the most important question of all. How do we make it stick? Roger Fritz was a realist. He knew that motivation is like a bath. It wears off, which is why he recommended it daily. He often said that a positive attitude isn't a destination you arrive at and then unpack your bags. It's a discipline. It's like a garden. If you stop pulling the weeds for even a week, they will start to take over again. Fritz highlights that the biggest threat to our new attitude isn't a major catastrophe. It's a slow leak. It's the gradual return to old habits when life gets busy. To combat this, he introduces a concept of mental maintenance. He suggests that we need a daily check-in. Just as a pilot checks their instruments before every flight, you must check your attitude every morning and every evening. The morning question: what is my objective today, and what attitude do I need to achieve it? The evening question: where did I lose my armor today, and how can I respond better tomorrow? This isn't about being perfect. It's about being aware. Fritz reminds us that success is not final, and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. A legacy of positivity is built in the small, quiet moments when no one is watching, and you choose to stay the course. As we reach the conclusion of Fritz's wisdom, we see the big picture. Why does all of this matter? Is it just so we can get a promotion or have fewer arguments? Fritz argues it's much deeper than that. Your attitude is a signature you leave on the world. Long after people forget the specific words you said or the tasks you completed, they will remember how you made them feel. They will remember if you were a person who brought light into a room or a person who sucked it out. When you choose a positive attitude, you are essentially telling the world, I am not a victim of my circumstances. I am a creator of my reality. This is the greatest legacy you can leave for your children, your friends, and your colleagues. You are showing them, by example, that human dignity and joy are internal choices that no external force can take away. Before we part ways, let's consolidate everything we've learned into a mental toolkit. If you remember nothing else from Roger Fritz's philosophy, let these be the 10 pillars you carry with you into the world. 1. The 90-10 rule. 10% of life is made of uncontrollable events. 90% is determined by your reaction. This is the foundation of all personal power. 2. Attitude is a habit. It isn't a personality trait you're born with. It's a mental muscle you build through daily repetition. If you don't exercise it, it withers. 3. The I get to shift. Replace I have to with I get to. This tiny linguistic tweak moves you from a victim of your schedule to a creator of your life. 4. The mental thermostat. Don't let the room, the environment, or people around you dictate your temperature. Set your own internal climate every morning and hold it. 5. Selective listening. You are the gatekeeper of your mind. You can acknowledge negative people, attitude anchors, without letting their perspective become your reality. 6. Goal-oriented thinking. A positive attitude needs a destination. Without clear, written goals, your mind naturally drifts back toward survival mode and negativity. 7. Failure is feedback. Successful people don't fail less. They just label it differently. Every loss is actually a tuition payment for a future lesson. 8. Enthusiasm is a choice. You don't wait to feel enthusiastic to act. You act with enthusiasm until the feeling follows. Action precedes emotion. 9. The mirror effect. The world often reflects back exactly what we broadcast. If you want more respect or kindness from others, start by broadcasting it yourself. 10. The maintenance mandate. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is permanent. A positive attitude requires a daily audit, a morning setup, and an evening reflection. Roger Fritz ended his career having influenced millions, but his message remained remarkably simple. Change your attitude and you change your life. As you go about your day to day, remember the sunglasses. Remember the lens. The world hasn't changed since we started this conversation. The traffic is still there. The difficult people are still there, and the challenges are still waiting. But you have changed. You've realized that you hold the controls. So, here is your challenge for the next 24 hours. Pick just one attitude anchor, one negative thought, or one difficult person. And instead of reacting, use your armor. Choose the 90-10 rule. Set your thermostat. And if you found value in this deep dive into Roger Fritz's wisdom, remember that the best way to reinforce a lesson is to share it. So, this has been a journey through the power of a positive attitude. Keep polishing that lens. The world looks beautiful through it. I will see you in the next video. Take care